I've got a background in the Middle East. I've lived on and off here. And the first time I came to Lebanon was in 2003. That's almost 10 years ago. I studied Arabic and Middle Eastern studies at university in Scotland, so I speak Arabic, and I've studied a lot of the history and politics and literature and religion, etc., from the region. So it's always been, well, not always, for the last decade or more, it's been a part of me. Um, and that, unfortunately, if the Middle East is a part of you, sort of conflict, is going to become part of your life. So I also went to live in Palestine, or if you like, the occupied Palestinian territories when I was in Bethlehem. I did that when I decided to go into journalism and radio. I'd wanted to go there for a long, long time, very interested in the sort of issue in general, having lived in the Palestinian refugee camps in Lebanon, and had an opportunity to go. So went there, learnt a huge amount, made a documentary, which, even though I didn't have much training, so looking back on it, there was a lot I could have done better. It was a huge learning curve, and then I think that's when I really learned that that's what I want to do work-wise as well, in the sense that I basically just had my radio, my audio recorder with me, and was in the West Bank for 5 months in total, and just went around conducting, with an angle, but conducting interviews, meeting people that I'd never go and speak to. And just learned more than I could have imagined in a short period of time by doing this work. So I thought, I got a huge amount out of it personally, and loved making the documentary. So I thought, this is a great way to start. For the past year and a bit, I suppose, I've been reporting from Lebanon. A lot of just Lebanon-based stories, but also, of course, on Syria, but its effects on Lebanon. So either doing stuff up at the borders, with smugglers and refugees, doing stuff to do with, if you like, more humanitarian angles, refugees, and doing pieces on the problems of integrating Syrian refugee children into education. So if you like, that is dealing with conflict at a distance. I mean, you are still reporting on conflict, right? These are the human lives which are impacted from, the revolutions or uprisings, whatever we want to call them, that's going on in their country. But you're, if you like, reporting from it as they are a step removed, or even from the Lebanese perspective, how people are affected by it, looking at arms smugglers, looking at political dimensions to what's happening here. Been doing quite a lot of stuff up in Tripoli, where there's been a lot of sporadic outbursts of violence, which is all linked. I mean, it's historical divisions, but it's all linked to what's happening in Syria. So I've been up there doing a lot of stuff, reporting on that. And if you like, that, I guess, was maybe preparation, but very, not sufficient preparation for going to Aleppo. I knew I wanted to go. I've been sort of itching, if you like, to get over there and report on what's happening. And then the photographer who I work with, who's been to Syria a couple of times, he works with me at the magazine Executive. As we were sitting in our monthly editorial meeting at the beginning of the month, discussing who's going to be doing what stories and who's going to be where and dividing time and etc. He said, look, I should tell you that I'm going to be gone for a week to 10 days at the end of this month, as I'm going to Aleppo. And then I sort of chipped in that I've been thinking about it, and I've been trying to work out a way of going, and I'm keen to do the same. So then, luckily, our managing editor said, well, how about I send you both, and you do a sort of, you do a report for Executive. So then we organised everything. It was down to me and my friend Sam, the photographer, to organise the whole thing, which is a mission. Like if you work for the BBC or CNN, you'll have like trusted fixers organised, and oftentimes you'll have sort of security teams that sort of do a lot of research and scouting it out, which is great. Great resources if you have them. But for many, I suppose, freelancers or people working for smaller publications or outlets, you've got to organise all this yourself. Which, if you've done it many times, you've been going backwards and forth, is one thing. But so yeah, it was a bit of a process. It was a bit of a rush. 2 weeks trying to find reliable fixers, trying to research routes in and out. You're doing your best to lay the groundwork, I suppose, but also in the knowledge that war is chaos, and really everything you plan once you get in there is all going to go out of the window anyhow. But still, you try. We prepped as much as we could. Did all the serious things. Refreshed our first aid training, and organised our insurance, organised fixers, which was the most important thing. By fixers, I mean people within the country, people on the ground who work with journalists, and get you where you need to go, make sure you've got somewhere to sleep at night, and make sure you're fed, have contacts within, the people that you need to be in contact with. And did a lot of that for other journalists, actually. Journalists who've just been or were there, through Skype or through meeting them in Beirut. Who have you worked with? Who's reliable? What areas can you go to? What's going on in the city? What are the main dangers? How much do the things cost? All these sorts of questions. Just trying to get that sort of information from as many people as possible. And then, flew to Turkey. Turkey, travelled through the border, which is open now. It's easy into Syria. And then that was, if you like, the beginning of the foray down to Aleppo. But then there's the journalistic element to it. Okay, what's the story we're going for? Who do we need to speak to? And so we're working with a photographer as well. Okay, what do you call it? Like the shoot list. Okay, if we're going to be doing this, we're going to be trying to speak to. We want to be speaking to this person, that person, X, Y, Z. We want to be getting shots of this. We want to try and get to these areas. So it's like a wish list, I guess. Create a bit of a wish list and having your mind, put that on paper, and also having your mind what you want to do when you're there. And of course, it won't go exactly to plan, but it's very, very useful. It's essential to do that. And then obviously on the ground, things mutate. You see things which you didn't expect to see, or you have interviews that you didn't expect to have, but they become part of the story, and that's, you just roll with that, and that's great. There's a certain amount of spontaneity to it all. But yeah, you try and plan your story before you're going. Yeah, of course. I mean, if you're going and you're saying, right, I am going to do a story on volunteer doctors in Aleppo right now, considering pretty much all of the doctors are volunteers. A lot of the doctors have fled, and then those that have stayed and are in FSA-controlled areas aren't getting paid. So it's a really interesting story. It's a very human interest, like humanitarian story. But it's also going to be quite emotionally. It has the potential to be very emotionally gripping, right? That story is going to set a different tone, set a different picture to view. Like, I'm going to go and spend a week with the snipers on the front lines, embedded with snipers on the front lines. So I think the story you choose, the story you choose is going to have a massive influence on your experience as well. If you choose to go and spend 10 days on the front lines, you're going to have a different time experiences, and also, your story is going to set a different tone of the thing. I went on a specifically, if you like, humanitarian business angle to the story, how people's lives, businesses, resources, foods, medicines, etc., being impacted by what's going on. So that meant I didn't spend much time around dead people or fighters. We stayed with fighters and they helped us out, but I wasn't reporting on them as such. And so I had a different experience to what I would have had, for example, for my friend who just got back, who's been on the front lines. So of course, how you prepare, and also different journalists have different ways of reporting it. So I think how you prepare in terms of in your mind's eye, who you want to speak to and why you want to speak to them and what you want to be asking them is of course going to set, or how you want to shoot is obviously as in shoot, not as in shoot, but how you want to shoot them or record them, etc., is going to have an impact on the tone of your report. So if you're a sensationalist, blood and gore, hard-hitting sort of approach, that's going to have a different impact to sort of if you're looking at nuanced, sort of very personalised human stories, a step back from the actual fighting. But that's the nature of journalism, for all stories, not just conflict. I mean, it's all dangerous in Aleppo. I mean, everywhere, even if you're... In fact, I was talking to a journalist friend of mine who's just got back yesterday, and he was a photographer who'd been right up at the front lines for the whole time he was there. And he was saying, in many ways, ironically, the front lines are almost safer because they don't bomb the front lines because they're so close to the regime's front lines that it's too dangerous. So on the front lines, you're not going to get... I mean, you've got a higher chance of getting shot by a sniper, but you're not really going to get bombed. Whereas if you're back from the front lines where you think you're safer, you're actually more likely to get shelled or bombed, which is what happened to us. We got basically bombed and attacked by a plane, but we were back from the lines.